and diversions that some of which we know about and some of which are on our enforcement screen, but the number is very, very large. It's been the policy of the board, if you diligently pursuing a water right, that we will not take enforcement action. However, the statutes are very clear. Any diversion of use of water without a valid basis of right constitutes a trespass to the state of California. I'm starting to sound like a lawyer a little bit, but based on that, we could have...
She's awake now.
Okay. Unfortunately, I spend too much time reading the statutes, I guess. But we could essentially take an enforcement action, and those are subject to administrative civil liability penalties of $500 a day, cease and desist orders, and violation of C&D orders of up to $1,000 a day. The board has several of those actions before them right now. I could mention them, but I think I better not. Our enforcement is somewhat limited by the resources we do have, and we're much like many state agencies. We're underfunded without a doubt. About 3 or 4 years ago, we lost about 35% of our staff to budget problems. We're also, much like many state agencies, experiencing the institutional knowledge is retiring, and those of us with gray hair are getting there. We have a lot of new staff coming on board, but we don't have the funding in many cases to expand that staff. Currently, the division has 85 people to address water rights statewide. So, and then the last one is enforcement. Is how do we go about enforcement? We do select various areas in the state in which we do proceed with enforcement. We picked on Mendocino County a little bit, I'm going to say in 1998-99, Redwood Valley in areas, and we found a huge number of ponds and diversions that required some water rights. Some of those are still under enforcement action. We did the most recent one we did in Sonoma County. We looked at aerial surveys of existing ponds only, not direct diversions. We found 800 of them that we had no record of in our water rights. We are addressing some of those and trying to scale that down. Some of them are legitimate facilities and some are not. And we've had over 200 to 250 of these owners we have absolutely no response from. So enforcement's a big deal, and it's huge.
Thank you, Steve. Tim Knoll, followed by David Catal. Thank you. Coble. I'm sorry, I thought that was a T. Sorry about that.
Hello, my name is Tim Knoll, and I'm representing Sonoma-Cutrer Vineyards and Fetzer Vineyards here in Mendocino County. We've done the studies at several of our ranches, and it does effectively reduce our water usage to darn near nothing. So it would effectively eliminate our ability to produce wines in the region. So I apologize if my question is somewhat beating a dead horse, but it seems that the current bill in its state really doesn't address the fish issue. We've heard that the fish have been declining over the years. There's been numerous studies in the past. There's been numerous policies in the past to fix that problem. So given this new bill, and if, as we all fear, it does pass in its current state, and our water is severely restricted, is there a plan in place to just check and see if it's working? And if so, a secondary question is, has there ever been any other auditability to the other study, the other bills, the other things that have taken place over the years to try to increase the fish population? And is there, with your limited staff, any plans in place to audit this study if it does get passed in its current state with your limited staff? Thank you.
A couple of things. I'll defer to Eric here shortly. I think we have ongoing monitoring requirements in many other locations, and we are monitoring those, and in some cases they're back before the board for review, and in some cases people have filed complaints over some of these monitoring requirements. Others are moving along, and they're working to some degree. But effectiveness monitoring is part of our process and will be more and more so as we move on into future permits. And I'd like to have Eric maybe respond a little more detail to that.
Well, just getting back to the initial comment about the their pending applications not getting water again, I would request when comments are submitted, we get the analysis so we can review it and make sure that we're all working from the same assumptions and we're on the same page. And I'd add to that and Paula Whalen brought this up, but I would add that we recognized when we developed the policy, we were setting region-wide criteria. And to do that, just by nature, you're going to have to adopt, to be protective everywhere, the criteria are going to have to be somewhat conservative. So in addition to having these set criteria, which are sort of a faster way through the system, the applicant has the option of doing site-specific study, which in effect could is the operative word, result in a relaxation of the site-specific criteria and potentially free more water up for diversion. Again, that depends on, we can't say whether it would for sure or not, but we try to build flexibility into the policy so that when essentially you got a no answer from the criteria, the regionally protective criteria, you have the option to do more work, and we try to provide guidance as to what that work would involve. With regard to will this, has this been shown to work elsewhere? I'm not aware of any other policies that are similar or along the lines of what's being proposed here. But our goal in developing the policy, as we mentioned earlier, was protect in-stream flows for the purposes of water right administration. I don't think we ever said, or it was ever our intention, to fix the salmonid problem throughout the area that we're addressing here. As you mentioned, as we state in the policy, there are a whole slew of other factors: ocean conditions, climate conditions, other issues besides flow and in-stream dams in these small coastal streams. The intention was to develop a policy where if we approved a water right application and it was consistent with the policy, we could make a determination that the approval of that application wasn't adversely affecting an existing or exacerbating an existing condition. It wasn't necessarily to say, if this policy gets implemented, the salmon problem will be fixed. Just, we're not going to make it any worse if we issue future water rights. And I'd add that some of the speakers have commented with the delay in processing. And I think in simplest terms, it comes down to, we're trying to answer the question, how much water can you divert from these streams without adversely affecting fish? And it's a tough question to answer. It's not that we're trying not to issue permits. We're trying to process water right applications. But it's a very difficult question to answer. And the NMFS DFG 2002 guidelines gave us some tools to answer the questions. We think the policy gives us some additional tools, brings some additional certainty to the process. But obviously, we have a comment period, and we're going to accept comments and evaluate those.
Thank you. David Coble, and followed by Tim Buckner.
My name is Dave Coble. I'm Vineyard Director for Fetzer Vineyards here in Mendocino County, representing about 1,100 acres. Thanks very much for this opportunity to speak. I guess one of my first questions is, regrettably, agriculture fundamentally changes runoff from lands, hillside lands, flat lands, doesn't matter. Part of this policy is to allow water to be bypass flows so that the natural high flows and low flows can cause stream bank development on these different areas. If we remove some of these ponds from the actual flow, allow this extra bypass flow, wouldn't we be causing extra erosion, excess sedimentation, which is going to impact fishery populations in the streams? Because right now a lot of these ponds are acting as sedimentation basins. We have one pond where I regularly have to remove sedimentation, which is resulting from rural roads. So I'm actually helping the stream by having my pond in place. If I have to allow all this to bypass, wouldn't that negatively impact the stream? My next question is, we're talking about these projects. It's not necessarily a guarantee that we're going to protect